Lieutenant Vex leaned so far back in her chair that the structural integrity of the seat became a genuine concern. "What kind of creature?" she demanded. "What kind of absolute evolutionary catastrophe? What nightmare organism from the darkest, most forgotten corner of the biological spectrum could possibly survive in that environment, let alone choose it as a home?" Ree hesitated for exactly one breath too long. He pulled up the final image. It was grainy, captured from maximum safe observation distance by a probe that had itself only barely survived the approach, its hull degraded by 40% on the retrieval. But the image was clear enough. A bipedal figure. 2 arms, 2 legs, relatively small by any objective standard. Almost fragile-looking, in the way that things sometimes appear fragile right before they prove otherwise. Preliminary scans suggest, Ree said very quietly, that it is human. The room erupted. Laughter, nervous clicking, a symphony of startled vocalizations in at least 4 languages, including 2 that had not been spoken as primary tongues in over 3 millennia, apparently resurrected by the sheer enormity of the shock. A human. Clef was practically wheezing, his mandibles snapping rapidly between amusement and genuine existential alarm. Those little pink bipeds from that backwater spiral arm, those creatures that evolved on a paradise world, they have flowers. They have sunshine. They have liquid water that doesn't immediately burn you on contact. What in the 17 hells is one doing in the zone? Ree closed all 3 of his eyes simultaneously, a gesture that, among Corax, communicated the spiritual and philosophical equivalent of "I have asked myself this question many times, and the universe has offered no satisfying answer." "That," he said at last, "is exactly what we are going to find out." The transport shuttle rattled like a dying refrigerator as it punched through the upper atmosphere of Sector 7. Every vibration a small argument between the craft's hull and the planet-profound hostility toward visitors. Ree gripped his command console and watched the hull integrity readouts cascade downward with grim momentum. 14% degradation, 18, 22. And they had not yet cleared the cloud layer. "Remind me again," Clef said from his seat, methodically checking the seals on his environmental chute for what Ree counted as a 9th time in as many minutes. "How exactly did we come to volunteer for this?" "We did not volunteer," Vex replied sharply, fingers moving across her equipment with the practiced speed of someone who had decided thoroughness was the only prayer available. "The commander volunteered us. There is a meaningful difference, one I intend to document formally in my personal log. I feel it is important to note," Lieutenant Rex interjected without lifting her eye from the sensor display, "that I also did not volunteer. At any point, under any circumstances. I would like this stated clearly for the record. High Command assigned all of us," Ree said, his voice carrying the practiced neutrality of a man who has made his peace with the universe's indifference, which is a beautiful military tradition, meaning we had exactly no choice whatsoever. The shuttle broke through the cloud layer, and the zone revealed itself in its full, gloriously horrifying completeness. It was, to employ professional understatement, aggressively hostile to life. The landscape stretched below them like the fevered dream of a particularly disturbed planetary geologist, a panorama of suffering rendered in geological scale. The ground itself was wrong, a mottled tapestry of purple and green that the sensors immediately flagged as having a pH level of 2.3. For context, that was more corrosive than the stomach acid of a terror slug, organisms specifically evolved to dissolve starship hulls for mineral nutrition. Rain fell in heavy, shifting curtains. The chemical analysis scrolling across Rex's display identified it as a cocktail of sulfuric compounds, dissolved heavy metals, and something the computer had labeled unknown corrosive agent, approached with extreme caution and possibly a last will and testament. Lightning cracked across the sky in shades of sickly green, not the beautiful bioluminescent green of deep ocean organisms, but a specific, violent green of ionized toxic gas igniting in the upper atmosphere. Each strike left behind a lingering chemical glow that had no business existing anywhere near a living thing. "I have changed my mind," Clef announced with the quiet dignity of someone making a formal declaration. "I would like to be anywhere else. A black hole, a supernova, the quarterly budget review, the ambassador's poetry recital. Literally, and I mean this in the most complete sense of the word, anywhere else in the known universe." "Noted," Rhea replied, "and denied. Prepare for landing." The shuttle touched down on the least hostile-looking patch of ground they could find, which was rear-reflected, rather like selecting the most approachable-looking shark in a feeding frenzy. The landing struts made contact and immediately began dissolving. Hull integrity at 61%. The ship's computer announced in the pleasantly modulated tone that computer systems everywhere had apparently agreed upon for delivering catastrophic news. Estimated time until critical structural failure, 17 minutes. 17 minutes. Rex's voice had gone very still, the kind of stillness that precedes genuine alarm. We are expected to cross this nightmare landscape, locate a sensor array the size of a transport vehicle, and retain in 17 minutes. No, Ree said, standing and methodically checking his personal shield generator. We have 17 minutes before the shuttle becomes a very expensive coffin. We are not coming back to it. His squad stared at him with a collective expression of being confronting an unexpected reclassification of reality. We are walking out. Cleth asked, the syllables arriving slowly, as though he was assembling the sentence by hand and wasn't sure all the parts had arrived yet. High Command has authorized an extraction team to collect us at the northern perimeter, approximately 8 kilometers from our current position. Ree paused. A light walk. Through hell, Vex said flatly. A light walk through concentrated, weaponized hell. That is one way to frame it. Yes. They descended the ramp, and within 3 steps Ree understood with cold, visceral clarity exactly why the zone's survival rate was so catastrophically low. His boots, military-grade composite, rated to withstand the thermal shock of orbital re-entry bombardment, began smoking. Not subtly, smoking with a committed enthusiasm of material that had decided its structural integrity was no longer its primary concern. The air itself pressed against his environmental suit like something with intentions. It wasn't merely hostile. It felt personal, as though the atmosphere was genuinely offended by the presumption of their presence. Atmospheric composition. Vex read from her handheld scanner, her mandibles trembling slightly. 62% toxic, 31% corrosive, and 7%. She paused. The computer has labeled this final 7% as aggressive and malicious and recommends not inquiring further. She looked up. Temperature is fluctuating between 40 and 90 degrees on a 3-minute cycle. Radiation levels are, another pause, sufficient to sterilize a small moon. They moved forward in tight formation, weapons drawn, though Ree privately acknowledged that shooting at the environment would be spectacular in its uselessness. Every few meters, the zone offered fresh demonstrations of its creativity. Plants that detected movement and spat concentrated acid in perfectly aimed bursts. Geysers erupting without seismic warning, spraying superheated toxic sludge in wide, enthusiastic arcs. The ground itself occasionally opened into sinkholes filled with what Vex Scanner diplomatically described as liquefied geological hostility. 2 kilometers in, through the shifting curtain of toxic fog, they saw it. A structure, barely visible, but unmistakable in its geometry. Is that? Rex zoomed in with her optical enhancers, her voice trailing into a register Ree had never heard from her before. Is that a tent? It was indeed a tent. Not a fortified survival bunker. Not an armored habitat dome with atmospheric recycling and hardened hull plating. Not even a basic emergency shelter pod with minimal shielding. A tent. The kind of lightweight, portable, recreational structure that civilized species use on worlds where the local flora did not conduct chemical warfare against visitors. This is a hallucination, Cleth whispered, his voice carrying the specific softness of a seasoned warrior encountering something that breaks his internal model of the universe. The toxic compounds in the atmosphere are producing shared psychogenic visions. That is the only rational explanation. The scanner is also reading the tent, Rex said apologetically. Next to the tent, a folding chair, and a small fire pit over which something was cooking, producing a thin column of smoke that rose with cheerful domesticity into the corrosive air. That smoke, Ree said, his voice arriving from somewhere distant and bewildered. Is that cooking smoke? Vex stared at her scanner for a long, reverent moment. According to every instrument I am carrying, she said slowly, someone is grilling. The squad found cover behind a large rock formation 50 meters away. The rock immediately began dissolving their gloves at every contact point. It was, Ree noted, Still the best cover available, which communicated everything about their situation with ruthless efficiency. "We observe," Ree said, attempting to project the confidence of a commanding officer and landing somewhere in the vicinity of a being quietly negotiating with its own survival instincts. "We gather intelligence. We do not move until we understand what we are dealing with." "Oh," Cleth offered with the earnest sincerity of a man making a genuinely reasonable proposal, "we turn around immediately, tell High Command the mission was structurally impossible, and no blame attaches to any of us personally." Before anyone could respond, Vex grabbed Ray's arm. "Commander, movement." A figure emerged from the tent. Human, definitely human. Male, in all probability. He was tall by human standards, solidly built, with brown skin that caught the toxic light without any visible chemical damage. No burns, no blistering, no signs whatsoever of the atmospheric hostility that was, at this very moment, actively degrading Ray's military-grade environmental equipment. His hair was dark and curly, his face covered in the facial growth that human males cultivated through a process Ree had never fully understood. His eyes were dark and attentive, and they held the relaxed brightness of someone who has been sleeping exceptionally well. He wore pants. Just pants. No shirt. No environmental suit. No atmospheric filtration apparatus. No shielding of any kind whatsoever. Pants, and what appeared to be open-toed footwear. Sandals, the sort of casual, completely unprotected footwear one might wear to a market on a temperate world where the weather had been specifically designed for creature comfort. The human stretched. A full, leisurely, entirely self-satisfied full-body stretch, the kind that communicates complete physical contentment with one's circumstances. He yawned. Then he walked to his fire, poked at what was cooking with the relaxed authority of someone who has done this 10,000 times, nodded with quiet satisfaction at whatever he found, and looked up. The acid rain was falling steadily. The human tilted his head back, closed his eyes, and smiled as a corrosive precipitation hit his upturned face. Then, with a long, deeply contented sigh, the specific sigh of a being who has found exactly the right temperature of shower, he let it fall. The silence behind the dissolving rock formation was absolute. "He is showering," Vex said. Her voice had the quality of something fragile being handled with excessive care. "He is treating acid rain, the same precipitation that has reduced our boot soles by approximately 30% in the last 4 minutes, like a pleasant afternoon mist." "I want to go home," Clef announced. There was no performance in it, no theatrical exaggeration. It was a simple, sincere statement of desire, the kind that requires real honesty to produce. "Right now. Immediately. I have never wanted anything more completely in my entire military career." A bolt of green lightning struck a rock formation approximately 20 meters from the human. The resulting explosion sent fragments of dissolving stone in multiple directions and produced a shockwave that Ray's chute registered as a significant concussive event. The human glanced at it with a mild, briefly curious expression of someone who has noticed an unusual bird outside a window. Then he went back to his cooking. "We observe," Ree said, his voice steady through sheer effort of will. "We learn. We do not act until we understand." "And if what we are observing," Clef replied very quietly, "is something that fundamentally cannot be understood." Ree adjusted the long-range scanner and focused on the human, who had begun humming what might have been a song. "Then we pray to every deity in the known galaxy," he said, "that it does not notice us." For the next 4 hours, Commander Ree and his squad watched Marcus Webb go about his day. And with each passing minute, their working model of reality crumbled with a quiet, inexorable commitment of military-grade hull plating in a 2.3 pH atmosphere. "He is preparing breakfast," Rex reported, her voice hollow with the specific quality of someone narrating events that have exceeded their capacity to process. "He has picked berries from that bush. The 1-hour scanner flagged as toxicity level 9 out of 10 with a notation do not approach under any circumstances. He is going to process them somehow. He must be. He will boil them, or apply some biochemical treatment we are unfamiliar with, or—" Marcus popped 3 berries directly into his mouth. He chewed slowly, thoughtfully, with the expression of a connoisseur evaluating a vintage. Then he picked several more. "Oh," Clef continued, his voice stripped of all remaining hope, "he is simply eating them raw, directly, without any preparation whatsoever." He set his scanner down with the careful movements of a being conserving the last of their internal coherence. Why would neurotoxins present a concern when you are human? Why indeed? Readjusted the observation equipment and watched Marcus prepare his morning beverage. The human walked to a small stream running past his camp, the stream that their senses had been tracking with particular alarm, filled a canteen, returned to his fire, and let it heat. The stream's chemical composition, according to Vex analysis, sulfur compounds sufficient to corrode standard alloys within minutes, heavy metals at concentrations lethal to most carbon-based organisms on contact, trace amounts of radioactive isotopes, and one compound that the computer, after what appeared to be genuine deliberation, had simply labeled, "Do not touch, ever, under any circumstances. This means you." Marcus took a long, satisfied drink. He sighed with the specific contentment of a being who has found the perfect morning beverage. He poured himself a second cup. "That is it," Kless said softly, with the quiet dignity of a being making peace with the end of something. "I am having a breakdown. Right here, in this spot, in real time. My military career, my understanding of biology, my fundamental trust in the reliability of physics. I am setting all that aside. I am rebooting. Please give me a moment." "Stay focused," recommanded. Though his voice lacked, he had to acknowledge a certain fundamental conviction. Around mid-morning, Marcus went for a walk. Not a patrol, not the cautious, tactical movement of someone navigating genuinely hostile terrain. A stroll, a casual, light-hearted meander through vegetation that Ray's scanner had categorized as Class 4 hazardous and recommended approaching only in full protective gear with a documented next-of-kin notification on file. The vegetation seemed to lean away as he passed. Not from the wind, not from disturbance. The plants had simply, it appeared, reconsidered. Then the predator arrived. It emerged from behind a cluster of dissolving rocks with the unhurried confidence of a creature that has no natural enemies. 6 legs, each ending in compound claws, a segmented body armored in natural plating that had been tested against Coalition-standard projectile weapons and found superior. Mandibles that dripped venom with the patient generosity of creatures that can afford to lose some. The scanner identified it immediately, a razorback stalker. Apex predator. Documented kill rate, 100%. They hunted in the zone because every other environment in the sector had already been rendered insufficient by their standards. "He is dead," Vex whispered. "There is no scenario. There is no tactical approach. There is no—" Marcus turned, saw the stalker. His face did something that Ray's translator implant flagged as requiring additional contextual calibration, because the expression did not correlate with any recognized threat response in its biological lexicon. He smiled, not a fearful smile, not a social appeasement grimace. A genuine, warm, delighted smile, the expression of someone who had just spotted something they are very, very pleased to see. "Hey there, buddy," Marcus called across the toxic landscape, his voice carrying the uncomplicated warmth of someone greeting a cherished acquaintance. "Come here, boy." The stalker approached. Ray's hand moved to his sidearm on pure reflex, 30 years of accumulated combat instinct overriding every other impulse. But the creature did not deploy its venom. It did not do any of the 17 documented things that razorback stalkers did when encountering prey. It lowered its massive, armored head and produced a sound that Ray's auditory sensors process, cross-reference, and returned with a result that took several long seconds to appear, because a relevant database entry had presumably never expected to be accessed in this context. The sound was purring. Marcus scratched behind what might generously be described as a creature's auditory region. The stalker's entire body languid transformed, shoulders dropping, tension releasing, 6 legs adopting the loose, comfortable arrangement of an animal that has found a preferred location in the world. "Good boy," Marcus said warmly. "Yes, you are." Who is a terrifying instrument of biological annihilation. "You are. Yes, you are." "I have lost my mind," Clef said. His voice was perfectly level, which was somehow worse than if it had been shaking. "I want the record to reflect that I stated this clearly and in front of witnesses. I am in a medical facility somewhere. I am hallucinating from atmospheric toxin exposure. None of this is real." The stalker rolled over, all 6 legs in the air. Marcus rubbed its armored belly with the comfortable, habitual ease of someone who had done this many times before. Ree stared for a long moment. Then, in a voice that had traveled somewhere very far away and was sending back transmissions, he has domesticated a razorback stalker. He has converted an apex predator, an organism with a 100% documented kill rate, into a companion animal. In 3 weeks. In the zone. Nobody had anything to add to that. After his walk, with the stalker trailing behind him like an enormous, venomous, quietly purring shadow, Marcus returned to camp and noticed something near his tent. The toxic rain had pooled in a natural depression, creating a steaming, bubbling collection of liquid that raised scanners assessed with a clinical alarm of instruments encountering something they were not designed to evaluate without distress. Marcus looked at this pool of concentrated corrosive chemistry, looked at his stalker companion, looked back at the pool. "You know what?" he said, addressing either the stalker or the universe, or possibly both. "It has been a hot morning. I am going for a swing." "No," Vex said. The word arrived quietly, without any inflection whatsoever, like a sentence that had given up on punctuation entirely. "No, he is not. He would not. He." Marcus removed his sandals, waded into the pool, submerged completely, surfaced, threw his arms wide and shouted into the acid-rain sky with the pure, unfiltered joy of someone experiencing precisely what they came here for. Now that is refreshing. The razorback stalker, the apex predator, the creature that feared nothing in the zone, the animal whose natural armor plating had been tested against corrosive compounds and found resistant, cautiously extended one leg toward the pool's edge, touched the surface, withdrew it immediately, settled back onto its haunches with the expression of something that has just encountered a reasonable limit and is choosing to respect it. "The apex predator," Rex observed, her voice arriving from somewhere beyond ordinary emotional registers, "will not enter the pool. The creature that fears nothing in this zone, that hunts other apex predators for sport, will not go into that water." She paused. The human is doing laps. Ree watched Marcus surface, shake acid rain from his hair with cheerful energy, and begin a relaxed backstroke through a pool of liquid that could dissolve hull plating. He watched for a very long moment. Then, quietly, to no one in particular, "I am beginning to understand why High Command classified this as Category Unknown." For lunch, Marcus prepared tea. Ree watched through the scanner as the human selected leaves from a plant the Coalition's botanical database had flagged as extremely lethal. "Do not approach. Seriously. We mean it. Category. Do not even observe for extended periods without shielding." He crushed the leaf between his bare hands, added them to his canteen of radioactive stream water, and let the whole preparation steep in the ambient heat of the toxic air. Then he drank it, smacked his lips with evident appreciation, poured a second cup. "My theory," Vex said, setting down her equipment with the careful movements of someone placing something precious into permanent storage, "is that humans are not technically a biological species. They are a cosmic error. A test that the universe constructed to answer the question, what happens when you remove the survival instinct entirely and replace it with audacity?" "That is not a theory," Cleth replied, his voice very quiet. "That is the only coherent explanation for everything we have witnessed today." Ree stood up. Both his subordinates grabbed his arm simultaneously. "Commander," Vex pleaded, her grip firm and her voice carrying every shade of genuine alarm. "We don't have complete threat assessment data. We do not know the full extent of human capabilities. What if he is hostile? What if he is friendly?" Cleth added, somehow making that sound considerably more alarming. "What if he invites us in? What if he offers us that tea? Commander, I cannot drink that tea. I would not survive that tea. I want it noted that I have no objection to dying in combat, but I absolutely refuse to die by politeness." "We came here for answers," Ree said, with the quiet finality of a decision already made. "The only path to answers is through that conversation." He checked his chute seals one final time. "Maintain comms. Document everything." He paused. "If I die—" "When you die," Vex corrected, very softly. Ree accepted this with a small nod. "When I die, this information reaches a coalition. What we have seen today matters. Record everything." He stepped out from behind the dissolving rock formation. Marcus Webb looked up from his toxic tea and waved, broad, uncomplicated, genuinely welcoming, the kind of way that crosses every possible species boundary because warmth, apparently, is a universal language. "Well, hey there," he called, rising from his folding chair with the easy energy of someone who has spent the morning doing exactly what he wanted. "Welcome. Come on over. I just made tea." Through the comms link, Ree heard Cleth whisper, very quietly, "He offered tea. The commander is definitely going to die." Ray's legs carried him across the toxic landscape on what felt like pure autopilot, his conscious mind engaged in a separate, urgent negotiation with his flight instincts. Each step dissolved a fraction more of his boot soles. The acid rain tapped against his helmet with the patient persistence of something that knows it will win eventually. The razorback stalker watched his approach with compound eyes that tracked every movement with absolute precision, but its body remained loose, unconcerned, the posture of an animal that has received reliable information from someone it trusts about the nature of this visitor. Up close, Marcus Webb was, and reprocessed this slowly, because it mattered, exactly as physically unimpressive as the long-range scans had suggested. Medium height by human standards. Solidly built, but without the obvious external modifications most advanced coalition species accumulated over their military careers. His skin showed no chemical damage whatsoever. Not even the faint surface yellowing that Ray's own species developed in slightly elevated atmospheric toxicity. His eyes were dark and attentive, currently lit with a particular warmth of someone who is genuinely pleased to have company. "This is a real surprise," Marcus said, smiling with the uncomplicated warmth of someone who genuinely means it. He gestured around at the apocalyptic landscape with the casual pride of a host showing off a pleasant home. "I've been here 3 weeks, and you're my first visitors. How about that?" Ray's translator implant worked steadily. "You have been here for 3 weeks. Give or take." Marcus settled back into his folding chair with the ease of being in its preferred environment. "Lose track of time out here, honestly. No clocks, no calendar alerts, no one pinging me about anything urgent." He gazed around at the toxic fog, the corrosive rain, the dissolving landscape, the green lightning illuminating vast clouds of reactive chemical compounds, and his expression was the expression of a man contemplating a beautiful and deeply satisfying view. Just me and nature. Ree looked at the acid rain, at the smoking vegetation, at the stalker, whose venom was dripping casually onto ground that responded by beginning to dissolve, at the steam rising from the pool where Marcus had recently been doing laps. "You call this," Ree said carefully, "nature?" "Sure. It's a bit rough. That's kind of the point. Actually, that's what makes it peaceful." Marcus reached for the canteen. "Tea." Ray's training in diplomatic protocol, 20 cycles of painstaking cultural exchange education, activated with the urgency of an emergency override. Refusing offered hospitality in a first contact scenario could be interpreted as aggressive intent. He was trapped between the approximately 4 to 5 second death Vex had estimated for consuming the tea and the potential political complications of declining. He accepted the cup. He held it the way a soldier holds a live grenade. "I am Commander Ree," he said. "Corax Void Reapers. We are on a retrieval mission in this sector." "Corax, that's cool." Marcus refilled his own cup. "I'm Marcus Webb, software engineer, from Earth, currently on vacation." He took a long, appreciative sip. "What are you retrieving?" Through his helmet display, Ree could see Vex's frantic scan of the tea he was holding. Her assessment arrived through comms in a rapid whisper. "Do not drink that, Commander. Toxicity levels would be fatal within approximately 4 to 5 seconds. The radioactive compounds alone would. If you drink that," Cleth added with quiet devastation, "I am not including it in the official report. I refuse to document a death by politeness." "Vacation," Ree repeated, setting the cup down on a nearby rock with extreme care. The rock began dissolving around it immediately. "You are on vacation. Here, in Sector 7, in what we classify as a Class 12 death world." Marcus blinked. "Class 12? Is that what you guys call it?" He laughed, a genuine, easy laugh that contained absolutely no awareness of how profoundly alarming it was in context. "That's pretty dramatic. I mean, sure, it has its quirks, but it's quiet out here. Peaceful. Nobody asking me if I got their memo. Nobody scheduling a 40-minute meeting to discuss the outcome of last week's 40-minute meeting. He gazed around with deep satisfaction. I needed this more than I can tell you. The acid rain, Ree said, his voice arriving from somewhere flat and very controlled, is a quirk. Oh, that! Marcus waved his hand with the easy dismissiveness of a man discussing mild seasonal weather. You get used to it after the first couple days. Actually kind of nice once your skin adjusts. Like a free exfoliation treatment. He touched his face with evident satisfaction. My skin has genuinely never been clearer. Through the comms came the sound of Clef performing a small, private breakdown, expressed through rhythmic contact between his helmet and a nearby dissolving surface. And the water you have been drinking, Ree pressed on, because he needed this confirmed by a primary source, for the record, for posterity, for the Coalition's threat database. The stream water. Yeah, it's a bit mineral forward, Marcus acknowledged pleasantly. You develop a taste for it. Honestly, it's better than the tap water in some cities back home. Don't even get me started on what they put in that. It contains radioactive isotopes, Ree said. Builds up the immune system. Marcus nodded sagely, with the air of a man sharing hard-won wisdom. That's always been my view. A silence. Mr. Webb, Ree said, because he needed to understand, because the Coalition needed to understand, because this conversation was going to reshape threat assessment protocols across 17 species. You mentioned your home planet, Earth. You said this environment is, and I want to be certain I have a correct translation, mild, compared to Earth. Marcus looked up with the expression of someone surprised to have touched a nerve. Well, yeah. I mean, have you heard of Australia? I have not. Continent back home. Marcus settled into the comfortable posture of a man, describing somewhere he holds genuine, warm affection for, full of things that actively want to kill you. Spiders the size of dinner plates, and they are fast, which is a part people always underestimate. Snakes with enough venom in a single bite to kill 20 adult humans. Jellyfish that cause neurological damage as a precursor to a prolonged and miserable death. Birds that literally kick you to death. Not metaphorically. They use their feet as weapons, and they have evolved specifically to be very, very good at it. A brief, fond pause. And that's just the animals. The weather does its own thing. Cyclones. Bushfires that move faster than ground vehicles. Floods. Droughts. Sometimes all of those in the same region in the same month. He smiled. Lovely beaches, though. Ray's 3 eyes blinked independently, his comprehension systems requesting a moment to process. Humans live there, he said slowly. Oh, millions of them. Great quality of life, honestly. And there's a place called Death Valley. Hottest place on Earth. Temperatures that can cook an exposed human body in hours. Marcus nodded. Beautiful landscapes. Very popular tourist destination. And Siberia. Coldest place on Earth. Air cold enough to freeze lung tissue. Months of total darkness. He paused reflectively. Also genuinely beautiful. Incredible skiing. And the Amazon. Every plant, insect, and animal has spent millions of years evolving specifically to be as lethal as possible toward everything else. The rivers present challenges that I won't go into detail about because I don't want to put you off your next meal. Marcus considered. Very biodiverse, though. And the oceans. We have ocean trenches so deep and hostile that we have more comprehensive maps of the surfaces of other planets than we do of our own ocean floors. He nodded thoughtfully. We visited the moon more times than we've reached the deepest points of our own seas. That should tell you something about the nature of those depths. Ree sat very still in the toxic air while acid rain tapped against his helmet, and his boots continued their steady, philosophical conversation with the dissolving ground. And you, he said at last, vacation here, because it is relaxing. Exactly. Marcus beamed with the uncomplicated joy of someone who has finally found an interlocutor who truly gets it. See, you understand. No crowds, no infrastructure, no one trying to sell me anything. Just me, the wilderness, and Sergeant here. He gestured affectionately at the Razorback stalker, who had apparently been given a name and had accepted it. And genuine, absolute peace and quiet. The rain here is nothing compared to acid rain back home. Honestly. Industrial pollution. We kind of did that to ourselves. A small, philosophical shrug. You adapt. Through the comms link, Vex's voice arrived very quietly. Commander, is he saying that humans chemically poison significant portions of their own planet's atmosphere and water supply through industrial activity, and then simply continued living there? Ree watched Marcus refill his cup of radioactive tea. It sounds that way. Yes. Updating threat assessment in real time, Cleth announced, his voice hollow as space, marking Earth as, do not engage under any circumstances. Do not make eye contact. Do not accept refreshments. Do not inquire about the wildlife. So what's this equipment you're looking for? Marcus asked, leaning forward with genuine curiosity. The sensor array. You know of it. Ree asked, something cold and precise moving through him. Oh, sure. Marcus stood, stretched with that full-body ease Ree was beginning to recognize as his baseline state of physical existence, and walked toward a large torp near the back of his camp. Found it about a week after I set up here. Big piece of tech, really interesting engineering. Actually, elegant system design. I spent a while looking at the maintenance panels. He glanced back with a grin. I thought about taking it apart to figure out exactly how it worked. I'm an engineer. That instinct is basically hardwired in. But I figured it probably belonged to someone, and I didn't want to be that person. He grabbed the edge of the torp. I moved it closer to camp so I could keep an eye on it. He pulled the torp away. The sensor array sat there, sophisticated, irreplaceable, sensitive, intact and completely undamaged, carefully positioned on level ground. Its most delicate component protected from direct atmospheric contact by thoughtful improvised rigging that Marcus had apparently constructed from materials found or fashioned on-site. Ree stared at it. You moved it, he said. For exercise, mostly. Marcus patted his stomach with casual, good-natured satisfaction. Got to stay in shape on vacation. Otherwise you come home soft. You stop challenging yourself. Your baseline just drifts down. 8 tons is a solid workout. Through the comms, a sound. Not quite words. The sound of Cleth attempting to form language and discovering that the relevant systems had temporarily suspended operations. Rex found her voice first. Our sensor array. 8 metric tons of sensitive military technology. He moved it. For exercise. Because he was concerned about getting soft. Hey, Marcus said, noticing the comms indicators on Ray's helmet for the first time. Are the rest of your crew nearby? They should come over. I was about to start dinner anyway. He gestured toward his fire with the warm hospitality of someone who genuinely enjoys cooking for others. I caught a creature earlier. Kind of looks like a cross between Sergeant there and a lobster. It's marinating right now. Should be plenty for everyone. Ree stood with a careful deliberation of a being recalibrating its relationship with self-preservation. That is extraordinarily generous. But we must retrieve the array and report back to command. Immediately. He paused. Right now. With considerable urgency. Sure. Marcus stepped back from the equipment. All yours. Hope it still works. I was careful with it. It was perfect. Immaculate. This human had physically relocated 8 tons of irreplaceable military technology through one of the most hostile environments in the known galaxy, stored it thoughtfully, protected it from the elements with improvised but effective engineering, and had not left a single scratch on its surface. Ray's squad emerged from behind a dissolving rock formation and moved to secure the array with the professional efficiency of people who very much want to be elsewhere soon. Marcus watched with friendly interest, occasionally offering observations about the equipment construction with the comfortable authority of someone who has spent quality time studying it. Safe travels, Marcus said, as the squad began to march toward the extraction point. He raised a hand in farewell. And seriously, if you're ever looking for somewhere to decompress, this place has a lot to recommend it. I'm actually thinking about setting up a second camp. Found a crater deeper in the zone that looked significantly more intense than this area. His eyes had taken on that particular brightness, the brightness Rhea had come to associate with a human contemplating something they find genuinely, irresistibly exciting. The chemical composition looks completely unusual. Never seen anything quite like it. And the predator ecosystem in the inner zone seems far more complex. I think it's going to be incredible. Rhea stopped, turned back one final time. More intense, he said, "than this. Way more interesting. I can't wait." Ree looked at this human, this pleasant, dangerously enthusiastic, completely unremarkable-looking human, standing barefoot in acid rain, holding a cup of radioactive tea, while a domesticated apex predator dozed contentedly nearby, and found he had nothing to say to adequately address the situation. "We will certainly keep that in mind," he managed at last. Marcus waved as they left, warm, genuine, entirely unconcerned. "Take care of yourselves. And try Earth sometime. Beautiful planet. Might kill you, but honestly, that's part of the charm." The extraction shuttle arrived precisely on schedule. Ray's squad loaded the sensor array with the concentrated efficiency of beings who want very much to be in a different location very soon. Not one of them spoke during the entire flight back to the command ship. They sat in silence, staring at various points in the middle distance, engaged in the complex, private work of attempting to integrate what they had witnessed into existing frameworks of understanding. Cleth rocked slightly in his seat, rhythmically, apparently without awareness that he was doing so. Vex had her face in her hands. Rex was composing what appeared to be a personal will on her datapad, her stylus moving with quiet, focused purpose. Ree looked out at the stars. He tried to remember a time when the universe had seemed to follow consistent, knowable rules. He couldn't quite get there. 12 hours later, Commander Ree stood before the assembled high command of the Galactic Coalition aboard the command ship Relentless, a vessel that had earned its name across 4 decades of campaigns and whose briefing room had absorbed news from the darkest corners of explored space without once going as quiet as it went now. Admiral Thornick, a Quellan officer whose 6 arms bore the accumulated decorations of a career spanning more campaigns than Ray's entire species had participated in across its history, leaned forward across the command table. His eye stalks extended fully, a physiological response that, among Quellan, indicated extreme and total concentration. "Commander Ree," his voice carried the weight of institutional authority, "your report states that a human is living in Sector 7, voluntarily, for the purposes of recreation." "That is correct, Admiral. This human has been there for approximately 3 weeks. With no protective equipment beyond, a pause that contained within it several unasked questions, pants, and sandals. "Yes, sir. He has been drinking the local water regularly. He also uses it to prepare a hot beverage. He appears to enjoy the taste. He has domesticated a razorback stalker. He named it Sergeant, sir." It responds to the name. It rolls over on command. A murmur moved through the assembled officers, 17 species represented in that semicircle, 17 different physiological expressions of the same fundamental experience, the profound, unsettling discomfort of discovering that something you believed you understood is something you understood not at all. General Tresh, a Vythaean commander whose campaigns were cited in textbooks across the Coalition, who had personally led operations that reshaped the political geography of 2 star systems, spoke with a measured precision of a being who prefers to engage difficult realities directly rather than wait for them to engage him. "Commander Ree, based on your observation, are you suggesting that humans are biologically immune to the environmental conditions of a Class 12 death world?" "Not immune, so." Ree chose each word carefully. The human, Marcus Webb, acknowledged that the environment was harsh. He used the word rough. He described its specific characteristics as, Ree checked his notes, because he had written this down by Barton, because it seemed important to have the exact language on record, quirks. He paused. He then compared Sector 7 favorably to his home planet, on the grounds that it was quieter and that no one here sent him messages about quarterly reports. The silence in the room took on a particular density. He compared a Class 12 death world, Admiral Thornick said, very slowly, favorably, to Earth. "Yes, sir." He specifically referenced a location called Australia, which he described as, and I am quoting directly, "a continent full of things that want to kill you." He then said, and I want to be precise here, it has lovely beaches. The Adrelian ambassador, whose species had colonized 7 star systems and who had personally negotiated treaties across 4 of them, raised a tentative appendage. "Commander, when you say humans occupy these hostile regions of their home planet, do they do so under duress, as refugees, or under economic compulsion of some kind?" "No, Ambassador. According to Mr. Webb, the hostile regions he described are populated entirely by choice. Many are considered desirable locations. Humans vacation in some of them. As Mr. Webb was vacationing, the ambassador said, "In Sector 7. Yes, Ambassador. He described his time in the zone as, and again, I'm quoting, getting away from the grind. Another silence, longer this time. The intelligence officer, a nervous Plexian name sketch who had been assigned to this briefing on what he was now privately reconsidering as the worst day of his professional career, consulted his datapad with visibly unsteady appendages. Until today, sir, our threat classification for humanity was minimal. Pre-warp civilization, fragmented governmental structures, chemical propulsion spacecraft, no evidence of engagement with other spacefaring species." He swallowed. "However, in light of Commander Ray's report, I have been reviewing our foundational surveillance data on Earth, and I need to present certain findings that have emerged from that review." Admiral Thornick gestured for him to continue. "Earth's population is approximately 8 billion individuals." Sketch pulled up a holographic projection of the planet, blue and green and cloud-swirled, deceptively, almost insultingly inviting. They occupy every continent on the surface, including all regions of extreme environmental hostility. They live at the equatorial zones where ambient temperatures regularly exceed 50 degrees. They live at the polar regions where temperatures drop to -60. They live on active tectonic fault lines, in the immediate vicinity of active volcanoes, not near them, on the slopes of them, in designated floodplains, in regions with documented annual catastrophic weather events of multiple simultaneous types. He advanced the projection. 8 billion individuals. Every hostile biome on the planet. By choice. 8 billion. General Tresh said softly. Something had shifted in his voice. The professional equilibrium of a strategic mind encountering a variable that fundamentally alters every calculation it has been running. Furthermore, Sketch continued, his voice rising with each finding as though the data itself was pulling him forward. Humans engage in recreational activities that include deliberately jumping from aircraft at altitude, secured only by fabric deceleration devices, climbing the highest mountain peaks on their planet, several of which kill statistically significant percentages of those who attempt them each year, and which continue to attract new attempts regardless, diving to oceanic depths using equipment that, per our engineering assessment, operates at uncomfortable margins relative to the pressures involved, and something they categorize as extreme sports, which appears to be a cultural institution dedicated to the deliberate, systematic pursuit of activities selected specifically for their potential to cause serious physical harm, engaged in for the purpose of entertainment and personal satisfaction. He set down the datapad. His voice had gone very quiet. This is not fringe behavior. These activities have significant cultural participation rates. They are mainstream. Admiral Thornick had closed all 6 of his eyes. When he opened them again, his expression carried something Rhea had never seen on the Admiral's face in 15 years of service, the specific, honest humility of a being revising a position they had held with absolute confidence. "Recommended threat reassessment," he said. Sketch stood very straight. "Sir, I recommend we classify humanity as a galaxy-level threat of category unknown. Not because they are hostile. We have no evidence of hostile intent toward any spacefaring species at this time. But because they do not appear to experience the concept of environmental hostility the way other species do." He paused, gathering himself. "They evolved on a death world. They survived it. They built civilizations across every hostile corner of it. They poisoned parts of it through industrial activity and adapted to the result. And when they find it insufficiently stimulating, when their home planet fails to provide adequate challenge, they vacation on worse ones." He looked up at the assembled command. "If they develop faster than light travel, and our projections suggest they are on a developmental trajectory that will produce it, there is no environment in the known galaxy inhospitable enough to deter their expansion. They would settle radiation nebulas. They would colonize rogue planets in deep space. They would build homes adjacent to black holes and complain about the event horizon blocking their view of the stars. The room absorbed this in a silence that had genuine weight. They would go, General Kresh said, horror moving through his voice like cold water finding its level, absolutely everywhere. "Everywhere we cannot follow," reconfirmed. Everywhere our most advanced equipment dissolves on contact. Everywhere we cannot send probes without losing them. They would look at those places and see real estate. Admiral Thornick straightened to his full height. The decorations on his 6 arms caught the light of the briefing room. I am moving to classify Earth and all associated human territories as restricted contact. Category: do not engage. The resolution is as follows: no military operations in human space. No colonization of human-adjacent territories. No interference of any kind with human activity or expansion. If we encounter humans in the course of normal operations, we extend courtesy, we cause no offense, and we remove ourselves from the situation with all appropriate efficiency. His gaze moved across the assembled officers of 17 species, all in favor. Every appendage in the room, in every form they took, in every shape that biology had produced across 17 different evolutionary histories, went up, simultaneously, without hesitation, carried, unanimously. Admiral Thornick made a notation in the Coalition's permanent record with the gravity of a man who understands that some decisions stand for generations. Humanity is hereby classified as do not provoke, do not challenge, do not accept their tea. A brief pause. What about Mr. Webb? Rex asked from behind Ree. He is still in the zone. Thornick considered this for a moment that stretched just slightly longer than necessary. We leave him. If he wishes a vacation in a Class 12 Deathworld, that is a sovereign right as a human being. He paused. He will likely grow bored eventually and return home. Ree thought about the specific brightness in Marcus Webb's eyes when describing the inner crater. That uncomplicated, genuine, irresistible enthusiasm for something that should have been impossible. He thought about a human who had looked at the most hostile environment the Coalition knew of and seen not a death trap, but an opportunity, not an obstacle but an invitation. He said nothing. The briefing ended. Officers filed out in 1s and 2s, already drafting updated protocols, amended threat assessment frameworks, new contact guidelines that would be distributed across 17 species and hundreds of inhabited worlds. The relentless hummed around them, vast and powerful, and Ree noticed, for the first time, somehow slightly less imposing than it had felt that morning. Ree remained at the viewport long after the room had emptied, looking out at the stars. Somewhere in those stars was a small, blue-green planet that had spent billions of years attempting to eliminate its dominant species and had, through some miscalculation so profound it bordered on cosmic irony, produced instead a species that found the attempt invigorating. A species that looked at death worlds and saw vacation destinations. A species that poisoned its own atmosphere and adapted. A species that named apex predators and taught them tricks. A species that the galaxy had been extraordinarily lucky to encounter before they developed the means to go anywhere they wanted. Because once they had it, once 8 billion Marcus Webbs had access to every corner of the stars, there would be nowhere left in the universe that was too dangerous for them to explore, to settle, to make their own. And they would go, all of them, cheerfully, with snacks. He suspected they would enjoy every single second of it. He suspected the universe, confronted with humanity at full expansion, would not know what had hit it. 3 days after the briefing, long-range atmospheric probes detected new construction activity in Sector 7. Deeper in the zone, in a crater that the Coalition's Geological Survey had described, with technical precision, as a concentration of environmental hostility that likely represents a local maximum for carbon-based lethality in this sector, a new structure had been established. The thermal signature, a tent, a fire, 2 heat sources presenting the biometric profile of Razorback stalkers, one familiar, one new, slightly smaller, apparently in the early stages of socialization by its new human companion. There was a sign attached to the tent, visible from orbit through atmospheric distortion. Reread it twice, very carefully, to make sure the translator implant had not made an error. Camp Webb, now with more danger. Vacancy available. Breakfast included. Local ingredients. Inquire for details. Inquire within. P.S. Bring sunscreen. Just kidding. Ree sat with the scan data for a long time. The planet turned slowly below the probe. The acid rain fell. The green lightning cracked. And somewhere in the deepest, most impossibly hostile point of that poisoned landscape, a human being was grilling something genuinely dangerous over an open fire, scratching two purring apex predators behind their auditory sensors, and drinking radioactive tea with the deep contentment of someone who has found exactly where they belong. Ree reached forward and deleted the scan from the active monitoring files. He filed a brief entry in the restricted archive. Sector 7. Human activity continues. Assessment. Ongoing. Recommendation. Non-interference maintained. He sat for a moment longer. Then he added a personal annotation, marked for his eyes only, never to be entered into any official record. The galaxy is not ready for humanity. He paused, thought about Marcus Webb's face when he talked about that crater. That brightness. That joy. The way a human looked at something that should have been frightening, and so instead something that was going to be, in his own words, incredible. He added a second line. The galaxy will never be ready for humanity. And then, because he was a thorough commander, and because honesty had always served him better than comfort, and because deep down he suspected this was the most important thing he had learned in 20 cycles of military service, he added one final line. This is probably fine. They seem friendly. He closed the file, looked out at the stars one last time. Somewhere in the toxic depths of Sector 7, Marcus Webb was planning his next adventure with the cheerful confidence of a species that had looked at a universe full of death and decided it was mostly just interesting terrain. The galaxy had been warned. Whether it was listening was another matter entirely. Presented by hybrid shadows. Commander Ree stood at the head of the briefing room, his three eyes blinking in slow, deliberate sequence, a nervous habit he had cultivated over 20 cycles of military service, one that his subordinates had long since learned to read as a bad omen. The holographic display behind him flickered to life, casting the room in an ominous crimson glow that painted unsettling shadows across the faces of his squad. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were Corax Void Reapers, the most decorated, most feared, most legendarily overconfident warriors in the entire Galactic Coalition. They had stormed the event horizons of black holes. They had wrestled plasma eels in the scalding thermal vents of Torfin Prime. They had survived dinner with a diplomatic corps, which, as anyone with a functioning nervous system would acknowledge, was arguably more traumatizing than actual combat. Veterans of 100 campaigns, they wore their scars away lest as soldiers wore medals. But today, Ree watched their mandibles twitch with something he had never once witnessed in 20 years of service. Fear. Not the performative caution of soldiers running pre-mission calculations. Not the professional wariness of warriors assessing terrain. This was something deeper and more primal. The cold, hollow dread of creatures who have glimpsed something the universe was not supposed to show them. All right, listen up. Ree began, his voice carrying the specific cadence he reserved for delivering catastrophically bad news. Measured, quiet, and offering absolutely no comfort whatsoever. High Command has assigned us a retrieval mission. Sergeant Clef, a four-armed veteran with more scars and sense in a jaw that looked like it had been carved from asteroid rock, leaned forward with an expression of profound offense. Retrieval, Commander? We are Void Reapers. We do not fetch things. We conquer things. We destroy things. We occasionally redecorate things with plasma fire. Retrieval is what you ask of courier drones. Yes. Well. Ree clicked his mandibles together in a way that communicated, I agree with you entirely, and there's absolutely nothing either of us can do about it. You are about to fetch something from Sector 7. The room went silent. Not the comfortable silence of professional soldiers awaiting orders. That silence had texture, a shared readiness. This was different. This was a silence of creatures who had simultaneously realized that their life insurance premiums were about to become very, very relevant. Lieutenant Rex was the first to find her voice. Though it came out barely above a whisper, her vocal sac deflating like a punctured hull. Sector 7. You mean the zone? The actual, literal, universally acknowledged death trap that parents used to scare children into eating their nutrient paste. That would be the one. Yes. Ree pulled up a three-dimensional map of the sector, and the room collectively flinched. It looked like someone had taken a perfectly functional region of space and asked a deeply unhinged cartographer to mark every conceivable method of dying horribly, and then had several extras, just for personality. Toxic atmosphere, confirmed. Acid rain, confirmed, and classified as aggressive. Predators with 16 documented methods of dissolving organic tissue from the inside out. The map used a cheerful little skull icon that somehow made it worse. The zone had a reputation that preceded it across 12 star systems. 347 expeditions had been mounted into its depths over the centuries. 12 had come back, and those 12 survivors had immediately retired, changed their names, and opened quiet little shops on peaceful outer-rim worlds, places where the greatest daily danger was an overpriced latte or a poly-assembled piece of modular furniture. They never spoke about what they had seen. They didn't need to. Their eyes said everything. The equipment we are retrieving, Ree continued, ignoring the low, collective groan rising from his squad like steam from a thermal vent, is a Class 7 sensor array. It went down in the zone approximately 6 months ago during a navigation failure. High Command wants it back. He paused for exactly 1 beat. Apparently, it contains data worth more than the combined value of all our lives. How profoundly comforting, muttered Cleth. What is the projected survival rate for this mission? Rex asked, her voice carrying the fragile hope of someone who already suspects the answer and is praying to be wrong. Ray's middle eye twitched. The probability models estimate somewhere between 4 and 7%. And the other 93%. Extremely dead. How extremely? Ree hesitated for just a moment too long. The report uses the phrase molecular dissociation 5 separate times. The squad exchanged glances across the red-lit room. Molecular dissociation was not the fun kind of death, not the clean, quick kind that soldiers made peace with before a campaign. It was a kind where your descendants could not collect your remains, because your remains had become a permanent, atomic-level contribution to the local atmosphere. You didn't die so much as become scenery. There's more, said Rex, her voice climbing an octave, eyes narrowing with the expression of someone watching a disaster approach and being powerless to redirect it. You have that look, Commander. The eye am about to make this exponentially worse look. You always blink your top eye faster when you're about to detonate something. Ree nodded slowly. He pulled up another image, a thermal scan of the zone taken by a long-range reconnaissance probe at the very edge of sensor range. It showed the nightmarish landscape in false color heat gradients. And right there, nestled in the absolute worst, most lethally hostile coordinates in that entire blighted region, was something that should not have existed. A heat signature, structural regularity, movement. Someone, Ree said, choosing each word with the careful precision of a man diffusing a warhead, is living there. The silence that followed was so complete it could have suffocated a supernova. Living there, Cleth repeated, his voice stripped of all inflection. In the zone, the place where the atmosphere eats through standard military hull plating. The place where precipitation is classified as a corrosive hazard. The place where the soil itself has been designated a war crime under the legal statutes of 47 sovereign systems. Correct. Living there voluntarily. All evidence suggests yes.